So now I'm back in Sublime Text, and we have our documents here, our index.html document here, and our CSS file that we've been working with to help render our website and to style it. So one of the things I want to know and talk about is a little bit about our navigation bar and about descendant selectors and how we kind of work with that. So you notice in our nav element that we set up that we already have, we have our nav element right here, and we set up a class already called navbar. So that way we can use it. And as I mentioned, and we note, we have elements nested inside of other elements. And I'll just note to you that I have actually 3 list items here. In our previous course, we created a home page, which is what we're using, which is what we're seeing now, our index.html page. We also had an about me page, which hopefully you got a chance to add some content to. But I also created a background page just as a way to kind of fill out our navigation bar. You'll notice over here, I haven't actually created that page yet and actually saved it as a page. What I've done is just created a placeholder and created the background word there as a placeholder and just use this hashtag until I'm an actual link to a file. So this hashtag will just take it to the same page that it's on. It's not going to do anything, but it'll help us kind of fill out our navigation bar. And so you see we have this unordered list here that's nestled inside our navigation element with a class associated with it. And by using this class, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes you may be in a situation where you have more than one navigation on your website, or in this case, we have more than one unordered list. We know down here in our list section, we have other lists that are associated with a UL. So one way to kind of designate things that may have the same elements but designate them differently so that you can do different things with them is to add a class or an ID to them. And that's what we've done. We've added a class, the navbar. So we're gonna go ahead and style that. Now over here, we're gonna go ahead and style that. So we'll come over here back to our CSS document, and we got our body styles, our header styles, and we're going to come to the nav section. And as I mentioned, I have some notes already here, and we'll walk through what these code and these styles will do for our website. So I'm going to uncomment this. So our nav bar will be selected here, and we still have our comment up here. So what you noticed here, a couple things, is we have the selection for the class of our nav bar. And obviously you select the class by using the dot and then the name nav bar here. And then we use a descendant selector. So how do we know to use and to only apply these styles to the unordered list, the UL, the unordered list that's in the navbar, and not other unordered lists on our website? Well, we do that by using a descendant selector. So we're going to tell the browser to only apply these styles to the unordered list, the UL, that's inside the navbar class. So that allows this descendant selector and the specificity of CSS allows us to do quite a bit, and as part of that cascading style and part of CSS, you can be very specific and take advantage of and use the fact that elements are nested inside of other elements. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to comment out a couple of these sections, if you will. I'm just going to comment this out and comment this out, so that way our browser will ignore them. I'm going to save that just so we can see what our site looks like now. We just have some padding and some margin that we added to the navbar and the unordered list in this descendant selector. So I'll go back over here, and this is what it looks like now. Just the about me, the home, and the background that I added as an extra list item there. And then if I refresh it, all you're going to see is a little bit of change in terms of the margin. That's it. That'll help us when we start to put our navbar together, because all we did was add some margin and some padding to the unordered list. We were applying styles to the unordered list. Well, let's try now uncommenting via shortcut here, uncommenting this list style type. So every list has a certain style, and I'll save it, and we're going to put this list style type to none for our entire unordered list. And what that will do, if you go back over here and refresh it, you notice how it has bullet points. If you refresh it, it takes away the bullet points. So now a lot of times you'll see, as I mentioned to you in a previous course, you'll see navigation bars and navigation menus. They're really unordered lists under the hood, so to speak, but you don't see them styled with bullet points that they come with default. Well, in order to take away those bullet points, you don't see them styled as a natural list you might expect. The way you take away those bullet points is to put list style type none. And so now that way we've taken away the bullet points and we have no list style type associated with it. So now we have a background color. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to uncomment, take away this comment around background color, and save that. And let's see what that looks like now that we do that. I go here, we have this nav element, it's a box included here. I hit save, and you'll see now the nav element, the navigation bar is within this black background, and it blends nicely into our header element right here. It's beginning to kind of take shape. You can see what it looks like. I'll go ahead and uncomment this next line as well, which has text align center. And that's going to do obviously what you think it might do. It's going to take the whole segment here, all the stuff, and put it in the center. It's going to align it to the center. So it's taking our navigation, our unordered list here, and the list items and putting it in the center of our website. So let's go and do a couple other things. So we have to not only look at the unordered list that's a part of our navigation element, but we have list items inside of that. So what do we do there? And I'm going to go ahead and comment this part out so we can see what this first part of the code does for us. So now we're asking the browser to look at not just the unordered list, but take a look at the list items that are inside of the unordered list that's inside of the navigation bar, and do what with them? Display inline block. So we know, and we talked about, there are different ways that you can display code, if you will, and elements in HTML. You can display it on the screen, and inline is one way, and then block makes it start over on a new line. Well, inline block, what that will do, I save that and go over to our document. What that will do is it will turn these into an inline, but take up a whole block. So if I hit refresh, now what we've got is we've got our home, our about me, and our background pages listed now in a horizontal way and not just in a vertical way, because that may look like more what you want in terms of a navigation bar on a website. And that's what that display inline block does. It makes it inline, but it's still taking up like the whole block with that. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to uncomment this. We'll add some padding to this, and we'll also go ahead and do font size. We'll increase the font size to just 1.2 times our body font that's up here at the very top that we set. So we'll do 1.2M for that. So let's see what it looks like when we add our padding in. And this is the top and bottom padding and left and right padding within the list item. So we're specifically applying this to the list items itself. I'm going to save that, because that begins to make a difference. As you can see, we kind of have things kind of bunched together, and padding will kind of put some space in between the inside of this block here. So if I do that, now we have them spaced out a little bit better. And we have 20 px's between them, and we have 0 on the top and bottom because we don't really need that. It's really what's between it that's important, on the right and left side of it. So now we have them spaced out nicely, and they're centered, and they're a little bit bigger than we initially had them. We have it spaced out. We're going to move on to the actual anchor elements. And as you know, the anchor elements that we've talked about, the anchor elements are the links themselves. And we know on our navigation bar, these anchor elements will be the home page, link to the actual page, if you will. So what are we going to do with those actual links? How can we style those links? I'm going to go ahead real quick and comment out these as well, a couple things, just so we can see what the difference is in the styles that we type and use. So now for navbar class, the links, I'm saying color blue. Change the color there to blue, and let's see what that looks like. I'll go ahead and refresh this. And so now everything is blue, and it's kind of like that before. It was default as well, but I'm just putting everything back to blue for a reason. It was the same default, but you can change the color to whatever you like. I'm just making sure that it's going to be blue, and everyone is blue right there. And then now we're going to take text decoration off. Uncomment that. Now that's an important thing, just something that you think about, and I'll save that. Something that you think about, because what you notice here is you have underline. And by default, a lot of links will come by the browser underlined, and you don't necessarily want that for your navigation bar. So taking that text decoration off, if I hit refresh, what that does is it takes away the underline. Now it's beginning to also take shape as a navigation bar. And so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and change and uncomment out this as well, the Proxima Nova, and as well as the font size will be the same, if you will, because it's going to be there as well. I'm just taking that off, because we really have it in both places. We really don't need that. But the font family is Proxima Nova, and I could probably add a comma here and make this sans serif. If I choose to make that sans serif, just to be consistent in case there's a block. You can do that either way. I'll put the Proxima Nova like back in, but you can make that sans serif. And I'll go ahead and put save here. And as I mentioned, I have purchased this, but I just haven't put the little license on this computer, but I got that. So I have Proxima Nova, font size, and we'll see if that makes any difference here. And I'm just going to, and you see that just changes it just a little bit. And I actually will take away, I'll move that here. That just changes it just a little bit if I'd like to do it in that way. And I'm going to go ahead and add back in that sans serif. No, we don't need it. We'll just leave it. We'll just leave it at that and just kind of move forward from that. So I have the Proxima Nova on that. I'll hit save and kind of move forward with that. And then we'll go back here. Now, if you want to do this, we could completely comment out these and not even have this. And if you don't like the style, we could completely comment out this, remove that altogether if you wanted to, hit save, and go back here if we like the other style better to make sure these other styles are taking. And it does the exact same thing. It puts in, you know, a sans serif font in our file. So we have that. I'll leave that right there. And then we'll go on to our nav bar right here. And so now we have a color blue, a text decoration in our nav bar on the actual anchor element. And now we're going to add a pseudo class. And I mentioned to you in the book, in this chapter, the pseudo classes allow you to do something with a state sometimes with an element. When an element is in a particular state, to do something slightly different. And so now what I have right here is nav bar for the A element to add a pseudo class or A element hover. And you can do something with the color of a website or color of a link when you hover over it with your cursor. So this nav bar A hover, color sky blue, I'll save that. We'll go over to here. We got to hit refresh. And now we notice when we go to our nav bar, we can go ahead, and as soon as we hover over it, it changes to a sky blue. And that gives us a little bit of effect. Now you start to see a little bit of interactivity, a little bit of motion, if you will, in response to this in your website as you start to add these types of things in your website. So go ahead and play around with this as you look at the nav bar. You've gotten kind of an introduction into, you know, classes and pseudo classes. Play around with this. If you want to add back in a different font family for your A links, that's completely fine. If you want to add a different font family, or if you just want to play around with a different color, or instead of A hover, you can do A active or A visited. You can do a couple different things here. But this will be our general code, if you will, for our navigation bar. And now we'll move on to styling the rest of our website as we move on to the next chapter.